We are resuming the meeting of the Kōrau Tōtōpū Long-Term Plan Finance Performance Committee of 9th of May 2024. That was this year. And we have our first submitter online. Is that Liz?
Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Liz. Nice to have you here, and we'll set the clock. You have 5 minutes, and that if you want to have any time of questions, that's part of that 5 minutes. So over to you.
Okay, I'll try and race through quickly. Tēnā koutou, councillors and council staff. Thanks for taking these days to listen to all of us. To me today, the top priorities, 2 priorities are climate change, reducing our risk, and also listening to the voices of Wellingtonians who are the most vulnerable at this time. In this long-term plan, there are 3 big drivers of climate change: aviation emissions, methane, and commuter emissions. As much as I support the Perpetual Investment Fund, I want to say really strongly that the council needs more control over the airport, not less. Remo say risk reduction is the top priority for emergency management, and in my view, aviation emissions have to contract quite quickly. So my ask is really that don't sell out here, please. And I checked in with a few people whose opinion in the climate space I value quite a lot strategically to just make sure, that I feel like I'm not, Anyway, that said very strongly, in other words. Turning to rubbish and recycling changes, I put through a couple of slides. The first slide, I don't know, is a bit basic. It's really a message of think smaller, not bigger. Here's our inorganic waste containers we've been experimenting with, getting down to a couple of rubbish bags a year as 2 of us in the household. That's inorganic waste, and the handful shows how much waste accumulates on a beach. It's amazing how every little bit scatters away. But most importantly, methane is a biggie for our climate over the next couple of decades, especially as we're already too close to tipping points. And so I'm proposing with the second slide, option G. And that's a bit different to what I put in the written submission, and it's quite close to the status quo. So that's the second slide. Thanks. I'm not sure if you can see that at the moment. It's
Yes, we can see.
Oh, good. Ka pai. Right. So I called it option G. I don't know, G for good, G for gradual. It's pretty much status quo. The main points are that organic waste bins can be introduced within months and start fortnightly, shift to weekly as needed. The bins, so any smell is contained. Existing glass crates for real recycling through colour sorting is retained. If householders want extras, then these could be bought at their own cost, with the prices subsidising lower rates for those on community services cards. Where streets don't suit bin collection, perhaps we could experiment with having big banks of street collection where you can drop off your organic waste and also recycling. And starting with the lower income suburbs in terms of, to make it the easiest there. By starting option G gradually, the council can prioritise rapid methane cuts by introducing almost immediate organic waste bins, and they're basically just a different lid colour to the recycling bins that we have currently. And then scale up bin sizes and collection frequency as needed. So it's very much an incremental approach to things, but it has the advantage of that immediate methane collection. Because the overall point is to reduce both our rubbish and recycling in a circular economy and cut methane as quickly as we can. The third emissions priority, if anything, please speed up the new cycleways. They're wonderful. They're really great for health. They're so easy to get around on. They feel so much safer, and they make a huge difference in terms of our climate and household budgets too. And local plug in Houghton Bay, which I talked about this time last year as well, which is we're about 10 years away from having a decent cycleway around the south coast, and it's really dodgy. I'd love to see little stretches of tarmac just a few meters that you can kind of duck onto and as a cyclist and able to, in order for traffic to pass. So experiment with little cycling shoulders there. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Yes, I've got time for one quick one. Councillor Pannett.
Thank you, Liz. Do you support the cut in funding to climate mitigation and instead putting it to climate adaptation?
No, I'm sorry. It's just back to the Remo kind of view that risk reduction is their number one priority. And mitigation has to come first ahead of adaptation, even though we know that adaptation is really important too. But we have to keep our sights on mitigation as their top priority. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Ka pai. Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome Megan. Megan from yesterday is now Megan from today, and welcome. No, Mai, you know now what to expect, and so we'll reset the clock for 5 minutes for you to speak. Thank you.
Awesome. Kia ora koutou. My name is Megan. I am currently a student in the Master of Design Innovation program at Victoria University, and I'm in the School of Design Innovation. My research is in the field of social innovation, and my work this year has been centered around looking for opportunities to make space with rangatahi in Wellington to design them into public space using co-design practices. Working within the co-design space means that my practice heavily relies on working with the communities that are involved and engaging with them to hear their thoughts and perspectives. Today, I would like to briefly talk about why I urge you to reconsider the closure of the temporary library on Manor Street, and if it is deemed necessary to do so, to encourage you to have an alternate solution for users who frequent the library to utilize until the Central Library reopens in 2026. Through the research that I have been conducting over the last 10 months, I have worked with the Wellington community in different capacities to learn how they would like to be designed into the city and what that would look like to them. I don't have the clicker thing. That's okay. I participated in, thank you. I participated in Parking Day in March, thank you, where over 200 Wellingtonians over the age of 16 filled out postcards answering the question, how would you like to be designed into the city? This day was filled with lots of community engagement and gave people the agency to share their thoughts and collectively have their voices come together. You can see some of the responses on the screen, and you also may have seen the postcards in your mailboxes or around the office. Through the written input and enthusiasm that was shared on March 2nd, the community feedback was high, and overall response to the activity was very positive. From Parking Day and the research that has since followed, I've learned a few key pieces of information. Wellingtonians value the outdoors, green spaces, and the aspects of the city that allow it to be as pedestrian-friendly as it currently is. But at the same time, they also feel the strain of public-facing, low-cost spaces to spend time in that are not work or home, which are known as third spaces. This gap is being acknowledged by the community when they're thinking about their city. Third spaces are important as they allow for social interactions to take place amongst community members. For teenagers and young people specifically, they give opportunities to grow and develop socially as they are finding their footings in public space. Spending time in third spaces can often be low cost or no cost, and they vary in the activities that happen within. The importance of spaces like libraries, markets, parks, community centers, etc., is something to take into account when making decisions about closing public places that may not be replaced by new ones. Many people, especially young people, have already felt the reduced amount of places to go since the Central Library and reading cinemas have closed. They too are feeling the gap in the city. Some of the ideas that emerged across age groups when asked the question, how would you like to be designed in, includes cafes and libraries being open later, more public bathrooms around the city, warm, safe indoor spaces, and places to write and accessible study spaces, and then also some places to gather that don't necessarily rely on alcohol. The list goes on, but the sentiments have been brought up across the different engagement activities. These perspectives are important to consider when discussing the closure of the temporary library 18 months before the central library reopens in February of 2026, as it shares a lot of these qualities. By closing the temporary library on Manor Street early, it means that it would take away a free public space that is utilized during poor weather conditions and displace community members that frequent the location without an alternative centrally located public space to choose instead that offers similar services. I understand that there are many, many variables that go into making these types of decisions for a plan like this, but I do hope that if a closure is necessary, there is a chance for a people-focused approach to be used in finding an alternative solution that allows Wellingtonians to have their voices heard and create space for them in the interim. The outcomes of the long-term plan will have lasting impacts on the future of Wellington, and our community's thoughts and opinions are just as important later on in the process as they are in the earlier stages. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a question for you from Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora. I was just wondering if you're aware of the Council Youth Hub that we're opening in Upper Willis Street later on in the year?
Yes, that is really, really awesome. I think that the library itself serves more than just young people, which is great. I think that that's really good for my research, but the library closing still will impact other communities within Wellington.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've run out of questions and we nearly ran out of time, but thank you so much, Megan, and yeah, we loved getting your postcards. That's so cool. All right, and I'd now like to welcome Martin Hanley. No, my Martin, on behalf of Newtown Festival and friends, sorry.
It is, including Emmy Pagoni, our production.
Oh, no, my.
Performance coordinator.
Welcome to both of you, and you'll have 10 minutes if you want to leave any time for questions as part of that 10 minutes.
Like I have eyesight problems.
Over to you.
Got it. Ko Martin Hanley aho, and of our 3-point submission, I'm here to talk about the value of arts and culture funding. And for those of you that don't know, I'm one of the coordinators of Newtown Festival. You heard from Anna earlier in the week, and some of our young musician and production people who are working in the office. This year, as part of Newtown Festival, as always, we have Massey students interning in the office, and that meant we got included in an amazing program that Massey University have on the go for assessing the value of live performance. So that's ticketed live performance and free live performance. It's an enormous study funded by IMBI, and its results are not yet out, but what I have just circulated to you is it's dated 2014 on its front page, but it includes quotes from 2017 and 2019. It's a parallel study from Australia that talks about the value of live performance, which they're hoping to find the exact New Zealand figures when they have finished their year's worth of work. And we'll be talking about that once that happens. But the key thing when you look at the executive summary is that through their cost-benefit analysis of live performance, which involved an enormous amount of analysis and surveying, they discovered for every dollar you put into live performance, you get $3 of economic benefit back. So the fact that the arts and culture funding is lumped in with the economic benefit is the perfect place to be, but you may not have been aware of the significance of your spend. And well, as the paper says on page 1, its introduction, the value of live music is intuitively understood by the millions, in this case it says Australians because it's an Australian study, but let's replace that with Aotearoans, whose lives are enriched by time spent on sticky floors and muddy fields at concert halls, and we'd like to add out in the streets and parks of Newtown. Music is an experiential medium, and live performance is its most elemental form. Trying to articulate this intuitively understood value, however, quickly reveals complexity, as live music informs identity, leaves long-standing memories, and helps create meaning across communities and cultures. Again, I'm going to replace Australia with Aotearoa's live music sector is similarly complex, comprising multiple interrelated industries whose contributions to the economy need to be accounted for. The quote in the big circle on that same introductory page says it all, really. Among its many attributes, live music events build communities and social connections, provide economic value, employment and career paths, and help create vibrancy, buzz and atmosphere in a precinct. But they also stimulate the heck out of the economy. The $1 in, $3 benefit. I'll take you to page 2. There's a little chart. It's hard to see on the smaller copy, which is why I suddenly realised I needed to print out a bigger one, or with my dodgy eyes I wouldn't be able to read it. At the point when they had their data from 2010, Australia, with its population at that point of 22 million, had a live music industry of 1.2 billion. Aotearoa, with its then population just nudging 5 million, had a live music industry of Australian dollars 0.89 billion. If we were to do the extrapolation for the population, we should have had, if we were the size of Australia, we would have had a $3.56 billion industry. And when you look at the dollar in, $3 benefit to society, please enjoy the read. And there is a full 48-page report that that if you really want if you want the concrete data, but we just thought, as you're debating the difficult task of how to balance the city's spend, this is a spend that actually goes around and around and around. And as we said in our very short written submission, the money spent in the live music industry stays in action in the community. Arts and creatives people don't tend to have super yachts, Swiss bank accounts and big houses in the Coromandel. They spend the money that you help them have to spend on living, eating, dining, or making more of their creative art. And I've left 5 minutes for questions.
Right, and I have one from Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, Mihi, thank you. Recently I've been grappling with how we can kind of support our venues and our artists in Wellington to keep making art. In your opinion, whether that be through grants or the long-term plan, what kind of suggestions could we bring to the city to kind of encourage more of this economic activity?
I'll also let Emmy contribute her thoughts to that answer, but one of the things I know from talking with the performers who enrol to try and perform with us, and the ones that end up with a part-time job working in our office, that's the sad thing. It's part-time. They're bursting with ideas for where they might want to do something, and they only need a little bit of seed funding. I'm pretty sure young Eddie said it when he was here on Monday, that some seed funding for new events. Like, they know about the road closures and access to your parks that we have consented, but we just don't have any activating fund to actually pay them to bring their production gear or their talented bandmates and be paid at least a living wage for performing. Do you want to add anything to that, Emmy?
In addition to that, we are coming here as Newtown Festival, and it'd be great to get more money to established events already, having not really received much extra over the last few years. And it's always, it'd be great to get a boost, because we've been running on empty for a long time, and to continue at this kind of level into the future, where it's barely increasing with inflation, is not sustainable.
We also are aware of the events that we mentor and help with their production. We've just helped Slav Fest to be on at To Fire, and they were helped with a council grant. Every year we help the Polish Christmas market. In fact, we taught them how to close roads and to borrow the council's trailer stage and put on a one-day gig every third weekend of November. And just this morning, Newtown New World was saying, why don't you do an event where you just put some stages in the side streets and leave the buses coming? I don't mean instead of Newtown Festival, I mean as well as. So, that's our retail sector asking us to put on gigs because they want the buzz that brings to their strip. And our musos would love to perform at it, but we need a pathway to be able to we don't ask brain surgeons and teachers and counsellors to turn up and be paid nothing because we built the space. We expect people who are, performing their craft and art to be remunerated, at least a little bit.
Councillor Abdurrahman has a question for you.
Cool. I don't know how many people know Newtown Festival is one of the largest annual music festival in Aotearoa. How do you manage, and it's getting bigger, do you have any plan how you can occupy more spaces in the future, and what kind of things you're thinking? The second question is small events like the one you said. What is the plan? What do you need from this council to support you with?
We need a little more seed funding. The fact that your 200,000 activates a spend of $980,000 is a real hard struggle for us. We could keep our youngsters working in the office so that they could learn how to replace us, because we're not going to last forever. Emmy does it part-time. It should be a career. We used to have James Coyle in the office, and he now works at Massey because he needs to have a home and feed his family and pay the mortgage. The industry isn't sustainable. We've chosen to donate our time to this cause because we love it, and we believe in the wairau of society is on show when people are singing their songs, dancing their dances, and cooking their amazing food and sharing it with the public or their amazing art on Newtown Festival Day. And we know we could run 5 events like that throughout the year, little ones that are easier to manage and not the same cost, and we could keep the team busy, but we just don't have the funds to do that, which is a tragedy. The creatives are there, they want to do it. And you heard from Sean on Monday that, he came back from Europe for reasons, but he goes, this city's not as easy to do that in as I thought it was going to be.
I'd also like to talk about Ahotini, which is a really cool initiative that you guys came up with, and there was such a lot of hard work put into that. And to be able to fully be compliant with that, it's a lot of extra work and labour involved, and we'd love to, Newtown Festival is already like the flagship kind of event for Ahotini, so but continuing to be a model for other events, and that we'd appreciate more money.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we are out of time, but ngā mihi, Martin and Emi, and thank you for the time to come and speak with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome Keith to the lectern. No, my Keith. Nice to see you. And you have 5 minutes, which goes so fast, but if you want to have any time...
Is here appropriate?
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful.
Thank you, councillors. My name is Keith Van Musher. I will be speaking against the proposal to bring forward the closure of Arapaki Library and Service Centre by 18 months. I had the privilege in 2023 of being a fixed-term librarian at Wellington City Libraries, and I will be drawing on that experience. Like many, I miss Central Library as it was, and have high hopes for the ongoing reconstruction project. I must question whether it is wise to begin closure of the temporary libraries before Central Library reopens in 2026. I say without mockery, until a project is completed, we cannot be sure it will not face delays. Without the capacity the size of Central provides, is it a good idea to begin reducing the capacity of our library system? Can this council not delay until Central is reopened, or failing that, closer to it reopening? To be specific, of all the temporary libraries since the Central closure, Arapaki is an odd choice to shut down. Its name is Arapaki Library and Service Centre for a reason. As part of the decision to bring forward Arapaki's closure, in-person council services are to be distributed to local libraries. It makes sense to make more council services available from more libraries. As public spaces, all libraries are multi-purpose. However, I question whether they have the capacity to deliver council services on the scale of Arapaki, especially smaller libraries like Kandala or Island Bay, neither of which currently supply rubbish and recycling, a service Arapaki offers, and are typically staffed only 2 librarians at a time. Compare Johnsonville or Ruth Gottlieb, relatively large library which also do handle rubbish and recycling. Ruth Gottlieb, for example, is typically staffed with 6 librarians at a time to give an idea of the difference in scale. A library may be multi-purpose, but its storage capacity is limited, as is its staff. I can specifically recall how, when selling council rubbish bags at Ruth Gottlieb, members of the public might ask for 20 more council rubbish bags. Management decided this was excessive. I was instructed to send frustrated members of the public to a place that could supply rubbish bags in that volume. That place was Arapaki. As the libraries deliver more council services, if they cannot match supply to demand, would it not be helpful to have a hub that has greater capacity? Central Library once was that hub. Until it reopens, please do not close or do not yet close Arapaki. Thank you, councillors. If there are any questions.
There is one already from Councillor Pannett.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you for that. So you think that the community really values having the two small libraries in the inner city?
I don't personally live in the inner city, but anecdotally, people like to access council services, people also like to access library services, and there are only so many public spaces available for them to do that. And closing them when our largest space is still yet to be reopened strikes me as odd. We've already closed Himatapi, which was a library facility, Wellington City Library Systems, that was spaced inside National Library. I'm just saying perhaps we should not close any more at this time. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Abdurrahman has a question.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you so much for your submission. And I just noted you are amongst the 86% of Labour voters and 76% of Green voters and 63% of National voters who opposed airport sale. What is your reason, if you can mention that? Why, as a young...
That decision is because I'm a Labour Party member on the airport sales. However, my submission on the Arapaki Library is as a private citizen.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much, Keith. We appreciate having that perspective that you have as a former library assistant in our system, and lovely to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other questions?
Doesn't seem to be. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thanks, Keith. I would now like to welcome David Pannett for Creative New Zealand. I'm garbling my words right now. No, David, nice to see you. And you have 10 minutes, and if you want to have any questions as part of that time. Thank you.
Ngā mihi atu ki ngā mana whenua, tēnā tātou katoa. I'm David Pannett, Senior Manager for Strategy and Engagement at Creative New Zealand, Toi Aotearoa. I'm here representing CNZ and our governing board, the Arts Council of New Zealand. CNZ is the National Arts Development Agency of Aotearoa. We encourage, promote, support the arts in New Zealand for the benefit of all New Zealanders through investing, developing, advocating, providing leadership and partnering. A few weeks ago, we hosted All In for Arts, He Wakatoi Eke Noa Ne Tātou, with the Arts Foundation at the Beehive. It was really exciting to work with Wellington creatives and locals and hear their perspectives on how arts and creativity impact their lives every day. As Mea Whānau shared at the event, art is the lifeblood of Wellington City. We commend Council's vision in the LTP for Wellington to be the creative capital where people and nature thrive. Your council has a valuable and crucial role in supporting arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi to reach many, and we thank you for your ongoing support. We're a co-investor with you into Whanganui Atara. We value our collaboration and shared investment to support a resilient and vibrant creative sector in Wellington. We know Council's facing many challenges in preparing the LTP. The LTP presents a valuable opportunity for Council to effectively invest in arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi to ensure the city can thrive. The arts are vital for our communities. We know from our research, New Zealanders in the Arts, that New Zealanders' personal connection with the arts has grown steadily over time, and many feel the arts contribute strongly to their mental health and well-being. New Zealanders are increasingly recognising the economic benefits of the arts too, and support for public funding of the arts, including funding from local councils, is higher than ever. We also know from our research that ngātoi Māori is increasingly embraced by Māori and by New Zealanders collectively, and particularly so in Wellington. Investment in ngātoi Māori also supports the revitalisation of te reo Māori and te ao Māori and positively enhances Wellington's reputation. In 2023, the creative sector contributed a whopping $16.3 billion to New Zealand's GDP. So investing in arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi is an economic multiplier. We commend Council's celebration of the city's strong and unique arts and cultural sector at the heart of its LTP. And we acknowledge the many ringaropa artists, collectives and community groups in Wellington that bring the arts and creativity to life in the city. So investing in the arts is an investment in wellbeing outcomes, and the LTP offers a crucial opportunity to provide secure, stable support to Wellington's creative sector. Artists around the country, including in Wellington, need our help more than ever. Our research tells us that 44% of creative professionals supplement their creative income with other work, and the median income from creative pursuits alone is just $19,500 per year. We all need to fix this together. We know firsthand that artists, creatives, and arts organisations in Wellington, from major companies to community programs, are currently under significant financial strain and operating with very limited resources. Despite these challenges, artists and arts organisations are continuing to uplift, support, and connect our communities every day. We congratulate Council on its achievements to date with developing resilient and fit-for-purpose cultural spaces, including Tākina and the strengthened St James Theatre. And as you evaluate future upgrades for the city, we strongly encourage you to ensure that you prioritise investment in spaces for creative communities to make, rehearse, exhibit and perform work. We note Council's intention to develop the efficiency of delivering arts and cultural services by operating more commercially where possible, and identifying areas for savings to ease cost pressures. We strongly encourage you to ensure you understand the potential impact of these proposals and to undertake targeted analysis, research, and consultation before making these decisions. We encourage you to work directly with the creative sector and to continue the work in implementing your strong arts and culture strategy, Ahotini 2030, to ensure the LTP best serves and supports the diverse communities of Te Whanganui-a-Tara. Wellington City Council has a crucial role in investing in arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi, and the creative sector needs secure, stable support to survive and to service the city. We know it's a challenging time for New Zealanders and many sectors across the country. The arts and creative sectors are no exception there. The creative sector in Te Whanganui-a-Tara relies on a delicate funding ecosystem that has many interdependencies. This ecosystem is fragile and is still recovering from the ongoing impacts of COVID-19, which disproportionately impacted the arts and cultural sector in New Zealand. As co-investors in arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi, we welcome ongoing collaboration between central and local government to invest in a resilient creative sector in our capital city. However, our own ability at Creative New Zealand to support the sector is currently under strain, and we have materially less funding to invest from 24-25, around 30% than we did for the previous 5 years. Shared investment's vital for a resilient and supported arts and cultural sector in Wellington. We encourage Council to ensure it prioritises funding for arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi in its LTP to uphold and maintain our collective approach. We share your aspirations for Te Whanganui-a-Tara and we look forward to working together to support arts, culture, creativity and ngātoi to support Wellington communities to thrive. Kua mutu taku kōrero tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, we do have some questions, and I have one, David, because I know that Wellington City Council, some other councils have actually already made some quite brutal cuts to arts funding, and could you comment about what you see as the impact of what is happening in some other centres?
Yeah, I think the impact, it's a difficult one because with the amounts in lots of places being quite low for arts, culture and creativity anyway, it looks like small beer on the balance sheet, but it's actually quite, the tendrils of that spread out quite far and wide into the community. And artists are used to running on the smell of an oil to get amazing stuff done. So I think it looks like an easy kind of, let's just nick a bit off here or have a wee haircut over here, but the actual impact from artists to those who support them to get great work made right out into communities as well, it's often invisible and not detected until down the line. So the message we've been giving is to think carefully if it's not an easy thing to kind of whip some money out here and add it to the pot over here. The impacts are disproportionate for the artists and for communities as well who enjoy all the benefits that a thriving arts sector provides to them.
Councillor Rogers, you have a question?
Yeah, mine, I guess, was contrasting the two submissions, but one was, I guess, comparing your submission to Sports New Zealand, and maybe that's not a good comparison, but kind of when they came in to submit, they were looking at, I guess, the offering of venues that we had and, where we might be supplying, some venues more than there is demand for that specific sport and then under-supplying in other areas. I was wondering if that's something that Creative New Zealand also looks at across the city in the work that we're investing in?
Not in great detail. It's our interest over the years, and particularly here, has been around how venues are supported or how physical infrastructure is supported. Is it easy? Can it be accessed? There was sort of a spell for a while there where the charges were creeping up and up in community groups, and we're getting locked out of that effectively because it was, in effect, council giving with one hand to organisations to support their work, but kind of taking with the other back into the pot by higher and higher charges. So it's something that interests us because a lot of cultural infrastructure is supported and delivered by councils as opposed to central government. So I think we all want to see those spaces that are set up and supported for great cultural things to happen. We want to see them full and energised as much as possible with life in them and being used rather than sitting empty or underutilised because they're not fit for purpose or there are barriers to people to using them.
Awesome, thank you.
Quick one from Deputy Mayor Phone.
How would you describe your actual working relationship with our arts team at Wellington City Council? Like, is it in succinct? Is it actually working together?
I believe so. I've had the great blessing to have a great advocacy team in my wider group who are doing a lot of work day to day, as they are other parts of Creative New Zealand as well, in terms of the creative community scheme, and there's different parts of our organisation who work with the arts team. But yeah, my sense and my perception is that they're doing a good job and they're working hard to deliver to Ahotini, which we support them on and enjoy collaborating and working in partnership with them on.
Great news. Yeah. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you. Sorry we're out of time, but we really appreciate you coming to speak with us today, David. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome to the lectern Nikki Wood from the Friends of Taputeranga Marine Reserve. No mai, Nikki.
Kia ora.
And you have 10 minutes, and if you want to have any time for questions, that's part of the 10 minutes. Thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. The Friends of Taputeranga Marine Reserve welcome the opportunity to talk to our submission on the city's long-term plan. I am Nikki Wood. I'm here representing the Board of Trustees of Taputeranga Marine Reserve, not with my day job, Water New Zealand hat on, or as some of you will remember from days gone by, when I was here at the City Council as an infrastructure planning engineer and on the other side of the fence of lots of long-term plans and several infrastructure strategies. I'm taking our submission as read, and I'll talk through the main points that we want to leave for your consideration and leave plenty of time for questions and discussion. Wellington is a blue capital. We are surrounded by sea on all three sides. Te Whanganui-a-Tara is the harbour on our south coast, is our premier asset, part of our identity, culture, history, and is important for tourism and the economy. Taputeranga Marine Reserves embodies the importance of the marine environment to our city. It's important for recreation and well-being, and the reserve is an attraction for locals and visitors. It enables our kaitikitangi and restoration of Maui and is used extensively for research by Vic Huni. So our first point is that it is a disgrace to see the ongoing pollution of coastal waters around our capital city. It's well known the impacts of what happens on land affect our seas: plastic pollution, sedimentation from land use changes, overfishing. And closer to home, on our south coast, the Sea and Marine Reserve has and is a dumping ground for sewer overflows, cocktails of stormwater contaminants, and leachates from open and closed landfills. Pollution and discharges impact not just the ecology and the environment, but our kaitikiatakana role. Last week at Water New Zealand's Stormwater Conference, Kara Pukitipadentis spoke. His keynote was entitled, "My Awa is Not Your Drain." He spoke compellingly of the legacy Te Whanganui-a-Tara, the streams and awa, have been subject to piping, drainage, diversion, contamination, loss of ecological health, loss of mahinga kai, tauranga waka, and other cultural uses of the waters, and the impact that this has had on Taranaki whānui. The degradation of water bodies changes the mana of the water, the maui, and its life force. Particularly abhorrent to mana whenua and our community at large is the discharge of human waste into our water environments. We, the royal we, need to be good treaty partners, honour our obligations, and stop offending and straining relationships with mana whenua and our environment. Our second point is that Council must prioritise the health and well-being of water. This includes improving the ecology and the quality of water bodies, and also the efficient and sustainable use of water within the city and within our catchments. This means fixing the leaks, putting in water meters, and reusing and treating stormwater, acting as true kaitiaki of this valuable resource. Water is a tonga. Whatever happens legislatively next week with the rebalancing of Te Mana Ōtawai, Council need to take a Te Mana Ōtawai approach to all waters, be it fresh, in pipes, drinking, coastal and wastewaters, putting the health and well-being of the water first. And thirdly, and most importantly, we need to fund the pipes. Council need to fully fund investment of 3 water infrastructure. High-profile pipe failures, sewer network and treatment plant overflows, and closed beaches have all drawn the community and councillors' attention to the poor condition, lack of investment and lack of oversight of Wellington's 3 waters assets and services. The Trust are pleased to see investing in 3 waters is the #1 priority in the LTP. However, it's still a lower level investment than is required in our 3 waters asset management plans. Renewals and upgrades remain underfunded, and funding to keep pace with growth and development is not funded. So what that means in reality is all the new houses and apartments that are able to be built under the new district plan won't have the sewer capacity to take away all these new toilets that we've created, which means overloaded sewers, overflows from the network and treatment plants, especially when it rains, continuing raw sewage discharges to our marine environment, closed beaches, risks to public health and offending iwi. Without fully funding life cycle asset management, water services, delivery and environmental outcomes will continue to suffer. We realise it will take time and considerable investment to address the bow wave of the funding deficit and get back on track with capital investment, but we must start now. Kai ora te wai, kai ora te whenua, kai ora ngā tatanga. If the water is healthy, the land is healthy and the people are healthy. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora. Taputeranga Marine Reserve. I was just wondering, we've had a few conversations, or I've had some around Houghton Bay and other things like that. What are the specific and largest negative impacts on Taputeranga Marine Reserve area, do you think?
There are 4 constructed sewer overflows directly into the Marine Reserve. There's 3 main stormwater catchments draining into that reserve, and none of that stormwater is treated. And then a Fero stream has X number of closed landfills in that catchment and a couple of existing open landfills, and then Houghton Bay is one large legacy landfill that's not doing good things.
Pauiwi Hohaia.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Nice to see you again, Nikki.
To see you.
I'm just wondering, in terms of what the best approach is in terms of, restoration of the mana and mauri of river systems. Is integrated catchment management, where you work with communities and hapua niwi, is that the best approach, or is there an alternative?
I would suggest that, with all my hats on, would suggest that they're taking a catchment, a holistic, integrated approach to, yes, working with your community and your other service providers, but also thinking about the natural environments that are in that catchment, the proposed land use and development, and whether those resources can support and cope with any further development, as well as thinking about climate change and the impact of drought. Is there enough water to supply these catchments, and then again flood risk and sea level rise?
Thank you.
Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, Nikki, for your work. Do you think more money is the answer to everything? Do you think that Regional Council, City Council and Wellington Water have the capability to actually care for water?
Pointy. More water. More money isn't always the answer, but with my engineering hat on, more money and more concrete could solve all the world's problems. But I think smarter spending, using a catchment integrated approach, looking at your asset management plans, working together with the different organisations, so with DOC, who are the owners of the Marine Reserve, and with Regional Council and their FI2 process, would be good to get that actioned. So it's a few tools in the toolbox, but more money is fantastic.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Thank you, Nikki. I just want to ask you in general, the long-term plan, some of the questions in the long-term plan. And there was a recent poll that came out, 79% of women, female, compared to 74% of male, oppose the sale of airport share. Do you agree, or do you want to say anything regards to the Wellington City Council selling its share in airport?
I'm going to decline to vote on that one, having... It's all about the water for me. Airport, yes.
Thank you, Nikki. I think we're out of questions. We want to express our appreciation for you taking the time to come in and have such an in-depth conversation with us.
Thank you.
Ngā mihi. I would now like to welcome Irina Pap online. No mai, you have 5 minutes, and if you want to leave any time for questions as part of that 5 minutes. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Irina Pap tōku ingoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've already done a written submission and I'd like to add to it. Like everybody here, I'm passionate about Wellington. I want it to be a thriving, livable city, a city where everybody can live, both students and elderly on fixed incomes. To do that requires council to keep investing, keep developing and maintaining infrastructure in the city. The big issue for Wellington, and you have a lot of challenges and most are not of your making, and I don't envy you the decisions you have to make, but the big issue is we have a local government funding model that is broken. In order to really do what needs to be done in terms of infrastructure, here we are with huge immigration, adding pressures, and councils are not in a position on their rating base with the way things are structured to fund what needs to happen. So how about getting together with other councils, pulling in other organisations to work with you, for example, the Chambers of Commerce, and let's resolve the issue about funding. We also don't need to be scared of debt. Councils are not like a household on a fixed budget. Councils have a lot of assets, but a limited funding base. And as we know, large international organisations are very happy to lend at very good rates to councils. The question about the airport, I'm strongly against selling the airport. Let's learn from history. Remember when the parking buildings were sold? Some of you may be old enough to remember, I certainly am. When those parking buildings were sold, within a couple of years, they were sold on for a big profit. And now they're a cash cow for the owners, as well as an accruing asset. Think about Wellington Electricity, sold for 180 million, and then 6 years later sold for 900 million, or was it 800? So holding the assets gives a base to complement the race base, but we need more than that. And Wellington Airport, holding it, we also have the benefit of having some control of development, so that development supports the city and what the city needs. So I really encourage you to not sell the shares. You've had a lot of people who would have given you some really solid information, and to me it just looks like madness and repeating history, repeating the past's mistakes. Wellington, the beauty of Wellington, and one of the reasons I love living here, it is a livable city and it is actually a walkable city. Right now, what I love about Wellington is I go along Manor Street, I go down Willis, Lambton Quay, and it's full of shops and cafes, depending which part you're in. And in order for them to thrive, we need people. We need people in the city, and we need to make it easy and accessible. The reason I'm not here in person is I, A, didn't have time for a bus, B, I couldn't face the traffic, and C, finding a park. So motorcycles are a very sensible way of travelling. We can get a lot of people in on motorcycles, so why are you penalising them? If we get more motorcyclists in with more motorcycle parks, then we'll free up peak buses. We'll have less people on the roads. Lastly, I want to talk about thoughtful development. There's a lot of development needed, there's a lot of infrastructure issues, but let's be realistic. We're not a Mediterranean city with wide boulevards and a lovely climate. We're the windiest city in the world. We're not a city like Amsterdam that has a fabulous transport system that gets you to the centre of city so you can take your bike off the train and then just enjoy it. Think about, we're a constrained city, difficult topography, so manage that carefully. We don't want the fiasco that we've got at Thornton Quay at the moment, all done with a good intent, but you'll be killing the businesses round there. So as a passionate Wellingtonian, I'm encouraging you to take a long-term view, to actually address some of the big issues which are not directly in your control but which you can impact, such as the funding structure, and not be afraid of debt to invest. Don't sell the airport, and make sure that it is livable for everyone.
Thank you. Ira, I have a question from Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for your submission. Do you think it's the right thing to do for local government to fund from polluting and owning car parks and that sort of thing, given the environmental crisis we're facing?
Well, I think it's naive when you look at New Zealand. We've got the highest car ownership in the world, and we need to do something about it with better transport. I despair when I go to provincial towns and see the amount of traffic on the road and things. I think that in terms of the airport, it's going to pollute regardless, it's going to be here regardless, and is vital to the economy and also for people to be able to travel, which they do. So I think it's naive to say, don't do it because it's a polluter.
Thank you, Erin. I'm sorry we're out of time, but I just want to express our appreciation for the time that you've taken to speak with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome Steve Cosgrove. Look, there you are, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we managed to get my presentation? Oh, we have got my presentation. Can't read it. Okay, first of all, thank you to all of you. Oh, cheers. It is, you've put a shitload of work into this. It's been very much appreciated. We're working on that. We'll come to that in a moment. All of you, some of you I agree with, and Councillor Young's hiding from me now, which is a bit of a worry, and then there's Councillor Rogers and everyone in between. But we have our disagreements, but it's been really appreciative of all the work you've put, and especially for Councillor Nebradine, whose surname I can never remember, for coming to the Newtown residence on Monday after wearing himself out here all day as well. So thank you for that. It has been a lot of work, and we elected you, well, you agreed to stand to do this sort of shit. And waste. Okay, you all have a mandate. You have a mandate to do the things that you got elected for. I've said you need to fix the pipes too. The reason for putting it that way is that I think the water situation, particularly with the loss of the central funded Three Waters scheme, has got bigger than what we realised at the election. It's great to see the sludge minimalisation fund. That's important. And we need to, that will be a big help. We've heard a lovely description from was it Vicky or Nikki, who was telling us about the issues around South Coast. So we'll get on to that. I'm really pleased every time my bus has to manoeuvre around the work on Taranaki Street. We're getting there. We're doing work with the sewerage, and that's the important part. I'm very much a non-growth type person, great friend of Donald McDonald, and and so I do believe that we will manage with the fresh water. There are ways of getting there. The most important thing is to look after that sewerage, and you are doing that, and I thank you. The big thing that seems to be missing from some discussion is that we need people who are going to contribute to growth. And that's not necessarily those of us who've been here for a while. We need to make sure we're attracting young population. There's a huge loss at the moment, but a lot of it can be attributed to COVID and other such things. But we need to look at evidence. What is it that attracts people to move around a modern city? What do they want? Space, a relaxed environment that encourages them to stay around, maybe go into another shop before they go home? Or do they want to be racing back to the car because that was the only way they could see of getting to there or to their council presentation? I think you can work on that one. And there's also the loud times. Oh, I should tell you my plan. I have a plan for Reading Central. You know this silly tunnel thing that they're talking about? Well, I think that tunnel needs an off-ramp that just happens to come through Reading Central. And I think you should prioritise getting that plan in there so you can purchase Reading Central under the Public Works Act, knock the place down, do something decent, and then forget about the tunnel. It worked in Patterson Street. Patterson Street looks much nicer now than when it was planned for the second Mount Vic tunnel. Didn't have that in my original presentation. You have to remember that part, it's not in my notes. What else have I put there? So these are the things we have to do. We have to be vibrant. We have to keep the city alive. It's not just about fixing pipes. That's important. And you need to balance that. Some of you were elected on a promise to keep doing things we've always done. Some were elected on a promise of change. That's a balance. And I think the people of Wellington have said where they want that balance to be. They've echoed the same balance in their national election, and I encourage you all to do what you're elected to do. And I'm going to leave you with one last thought from a person I greatly admire. That's what we're here to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. We have a question from Councillor Abdirahman.
And I think I'm not sure about the airport shares.
That was extremely efficient of you to answer the question without it being asked.
No, I think absolutely right. And look, you are from Paikaukaua just like me, and I'm councillor for that area, as you know. It's very progressive
Okay,
ward.
no, we know a speech.
And, okay, yeah, fair enough. 84% of Paikaukaua who polled say they oppose the sale of airport. Are you among the minority then, Steve?
I am worried about, well, I'm not a great supporter of growth. Our ownership of airport shares has not stopped that huge bloody big car park and the rest of it. It hasn't stopped the airport taking the council to court, for heaven's sake, over a perfectly reasonable pedestrian crossing. So I'm not sure that's a good argument for keeping the shares in terms of influence, but of course it could be worse. So I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate you taking the time to come in and make us laugh.
Process. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time.
Thank you. No, my Louise Tong. Welcome to the lectern, and you have 5 minutes. If you want to leave time for questions, that'll be part of that 5 minutes. Thank you. Can I sit down here? You get a green light on the microphone so we can hear you.
Great. Kia ora tātou. I love this city. Over the last 3 decades, I have lived in 6 of its suburbs. I've cycled its streets, hiked its hills, and raised my 3 kids here. These days, I walk the city, and instead of being proud, I am brought to tears. I see for lease signs, for sale signs everywhere. I see sites boarded up or derelict. I see waste, leaking pipes, and massive disruption. 5 years ago, I spent Mother's Day writing a submission saying the council was spending too much and spreading itself too thinly across too many things. I urged the council to focus on getting the basics right and keeping rates affordable before embarking on the hundreds of nice-to-have projects. Your long-term documents do not once contemplate affordability from a ratepayer perspective. And here we are today. From rates doubling in the last long-term plan to rates tripling under this. From debt doubling to debt tripling. A 5-year-old could work out what to expect in the next long-term plan. And in a token effort to look fiscally prudent, the council is putting up nickel and dime savings by culling beloved community assets, when instead you should be focusing on 3 things. 1, a review of the big levers. There are many big ticket items that you do not need to spend ratepayer money on. You are spending $1.6 billion of ratepayer money on discretionary items, including $900 million on social housing, a central government issue to lean into. You are spending hundreds of millions on cycleways and Let's Get Wellington Moving projects that your citizens do not want. On top of Regional Council giving iwi $60 million over 10 years, you are giving another $65 million of your ratepayer money to mana whenua. You are taking tens of thousands of dollars off each and every household for these items. Number 2, you need to stop doing some things. Perhaps instead of spending $121 million on a zoo for caged sub-Saharan animals, why not have an amazing, free, Margaret Mayhew-style playground and focus on supporting Zealandia and Kiwi in our hills instead? You're tripling rates, and yet you propose to subsidise 100-odd golf club members to the tune of more than $20,000 each over the long-term plan. Your OPEX has increased nearly 40% in 3 years. You need to have a long, hard, sober look at your costs and bring them down. Your ratepayers are already funding over $500 million towards the Riverlink and sludge projects. Can they also afford to fund the raft of climate initiatives by the council when many of these are, again, duplicating central government efforts? And thirdly, you need to drive more revenue. Crank up the rates even more on derelict and abandoned property. Get some congestion charging going. Lobby for regulatory change if you need it. Stop ripping out car parks. You do not need to give full rates remission on more properties to meet your treaty obligations. Many of your residents and businesses are facing real financial hardship. Insurance and mortgage costs are decimating household budgets. Burgeoning rates bills make their situation more and more dire. And things may be even worse than your forecasts suggest. What if the population increases don't happen? If you seek to alleviate pressure for some by laying heavier burdens on others, they will leave, and businesses will leave if they cannot find skilled workers. Your citizens are angry. Read your Facebook pages. They are not capable of funding the massive spend up you're planning. They will leave. Already, shopping, dining and entertaining is more accessible in surrounding cities. People have choices. Businesses have choices. And you are forcing them not to choose Wellington. I'm speaking to you today as a passionate Wellingtonian with a career here in finance, energy and sustainability. Credentials that I believe provide me with an ability to provide an informed and balanced view. I do not speak in self-interest. My statements are not political. They are not ideological. My only concern is for the future of the city and for the future of everyone here. Can you all, each one of you, honestly stand behind this long-term plan and say the same thing?
Thank you, Louise. I'm sorry we're out of time, but we would like to express our appreciation for you taking the time to come and speak with us today. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome friends of the Wellington Botanic Garden. No mai, and you have 10 minutes, and if you'd like to have leave time for questions as part of that, welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm Bart Van Stratum, and this is one of my committee members, Anne-Marie Nang. We're not that familiar or experienced in giving submissions like this, so be patient with us. We don't have any additional material to hand out, but I'd like to just go over our written submission for a few minutes. And I'll start by just talking about who the friends are. So we're a group of volunteers. You could see us as unpaid staff members of Wellington City Council. We've been active in the area of fundraising and friend-raising for the gardens for 34 years. This submission that we put forward reflects our incorporated pillars for supporting the development of the Botanic Gardens by supporting the garden's historical, social, educational and scientific endeavours. Our key concern, and that is why we're here today, is that we're unhappy with the lack of additional funding being allocated towards the total refurbishment of the Begonia House and the general lack of funding to the gardens. The facts. It's estimated that the Begonia House requires an additional $27 million capital funding to be allocated on top of the $7.75 million already promised to bring the building up to an acceptable level of maintenance and appropriate health and safety standards. The original Begonia House was considerably improved after a very generous donation from the members of the public of $25,000 some years ago. The current building was constructed in 1960. We understand that the time has come for significant improvements to the structure that will mean its legacy can continue well into the future and remain a major attraction for Wellingtonians and visitors alike. The funding matters. Reading the draft revenue and financing policy, it appears that Wellington Gardens are once again being asked to do more with less. This capital cost cutting has a great impact on the garden. As with each financial cycle, there is an actual reduction in the capital available due to inflation and increased costs. A good example is the ever-diminishing pool of funds spent on things like tulip bulbs planting. 30 years ago, the Botanic Gardens planted 30,000 bulbs. This year, it is 7,000. Although we are proud of the garden, it is disappointing that due to the underfunding, it is not able to do the best to showcase this award-winning garden, welcoming over 1.3 million visitors a year and photographed and admired by people from across the country and around the world. I'll just ask Anne-Marie here to talk about what will happen if we get the full funding for the Begonia House.
Well, I'll start by saying kia ora to all here. The welcoming of over 1.3 million visitors a year is almost past tense. With the cycle lanes, we've put in a proposal about that, of course, some time ago. That's been cut. The families can't come now with their picnics and children in the weekend, and I know from living nearby, walking through the gardens, the numbers are way down. In fact, we're paying at the moment for a survey to be done, a proper survey, from a city promoter, and we'll know the facts next time to be able to say how far they are down. They're just not coming, those big families that we used to see on the weekend. So that's the cycle way, and we all expect some consequences from that, but that's disturbing to us and the garden staff, in fact. Now, the first thing we hoped we'd achieve from the funding was superior visitor experiences for those who do come. We've spent a lot of time in training and learning about how to be good guides, we run educational seminars at the Tree House. We run concerts every month in the Begonia House, but as you know, it's closed at the moment for a few months, which is distressing. And we bring in people to raise funds for our educational centre we're setting up. So funding is required, and we're been doing that now for 34 years and even increasing that. We'd have funding would achieve better integrated retail and care space, improved climate control. We've got ways of dealing with the emissions through the gardens, of course, like those in Australia. They're planting plants that will be sustainable in the heat and the climate change we're all experiencing. Emissions and water management, all of that has to be looked at, and they're very old, some of those setups in the gardens, since they were set up in 1869, as you probably know, the Botanic Gardens. We need increased hireability of venues. We make some money from the tree house, but a lot more could be made, and the begonia house has been used for weddings and so on, but of course it can't at the moment with the Anzac Day storm we had and the glass broke in the top, so it's closed, so that's the end of the venue capability. Another very key point would be the managed refuse and water storage. Another way is to improve the way the plant stories are shared. And the last one, the green building solution. Australia's making a lot of green roofing. We don't seem to have any in Wellington that I heard about anyway, but the gardens are keen to do that, solar energy and rainwater harvesting. So those were just a few points and bullet points of what we might achieve from extra funding. Thank you.
Okay. We obviously support the amount of CapEx that you have set aside for the Begonia House. And as Anne-Marie said, the space serves as an educational facility that showcases botany, encourages social interaction, and is the host to many educational visits while constantly exhibiting excellent curation and numerous exotic plant varieties. This is a big thank you. The Friends would like to acknowledge and formally thank the majority of the Wellington City Councillors who voted to include the Begonia House CapEx of the 7.75 million as costed over 3 to 6 years. The long-term plan committee meeting, sorry, I've lost the plot there. So that 7.75 million was set aside, I think, at a long-term planning meeting of the committee on the 4th of March 2022. We would also like to acknowledge that this agreed amount is protected under the current proposed 10-year plan. This submission documents the Friends' concerns about the lack of funding, more funding for the Botanic Gardens in general, and in particular the required work to the Begonia House. In addition to the protected amount, we request that the full capital costs of the refurbishment of Begonia House be budgeted into this long-term plan and implemented within a 5-year period. Thank you. If you've got any questions.
There appear not to be any, and I just want to say in our defence, we're at the end of a very long schedule of hearings, so our question well is running a little bit dry. But I would like to thank you both, Bart and Anne-Marie, for all the work that you do and for coming in to speak with us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, I mean, I would like to have streamers and balloons coming from the ceiling. Adam Shaney, you are the last oral submitter on this long-term plan. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Kōrau. I'll try and keep it to time as best I can. Okay, so there were just 2 aspects of the long-term plan that I would like to talk to, if you will forgive me. So the first is the issue of waste. It's interesting, I've heard quite a lot about, from the 2 previous submitters, about the cost of things. What I would like to talk about really is building for the future. The long-term cost to the council of maintaining and extending the southern landfill is huge, and that doesn't even take into account the greenhouse gas emissions that are inherent in maintaining a landfill. We absolutely have to reduce the amount of waste that's sent to landfill, and a growing population is only going to make this worse. Curbside schemes with 120 litre bins with separate food and garden waste collection is completely normal in the UK, where I lived for quite a long time, and I really miss having that as a service. In the UK, that has seen an absolutely massive improved diversion from landfill. I also wanted to talk briefly on the subject of landfill about commercial services. So my mum lives in Kōrau, and everyone in her close uses the same commercial service. Most of her food waste actually goes down the drain. We've tried to talk her into not doing that. The remainder and all of her garden waste joins all of her recyclable waste in going to landfill. I don't really understand how commercial operators are allowed to do this. I genuinely can't believe that they sit down and sort through everything. So presumably this is all going into one big pile somewhere. And I think the larger bins and food and garden waste collection would definitely help with this. And finally on this, having one unified scheme will mean fewer vehicles on the road, which will mean better road safety, lower costs, and will also help to reduce greenhouse emissions. So the second issue that I'd like to talk to is the future of the cycleways. Wellington Council's speed in putting together the transitional infrastructure has been honestly pretty amazing. It's been internationally recognised, and losing that momentum would be incredibly sad. At the moment, cycling on most of Wellington's streets is extremely intimidating, particularly for new cyclists, but even experienced cyclists find it hard. I've used the example of my wife before, who, even though she cycled for many years and has spent ages cycling on the roads when we lived in Edinburgh, she cannot bring herself to face the meat grinder that is Wellington's streets at the moment. I'm not in that camp, but even I've noticed how much more pleasant my commute from Island Bay into Te Aro to work is when I'm going through Newtown. And I use that route all the time now because it's just much nicer. Getting people to switch to active transport is so valuable for Wellington's long term. If it wants to become a more vibrant capital, then living streets that are devoted to people are vital, and active transport is key to this. Cycle lanes cost dramatically less to maintain. Cyclists are healthier and happier, and every new cyclist on a bike is in a cycle lane is a car that isn't in the way of everyone else, causing congestion and damage. And I think this is one of the things that maybe we as the cycling lobby miss in terms of promoting this, that this actually stops a car being in front of someone else. The key thing that Wellington needs to keep doing is building routes. The Hutt Road lane, for example, is awesome infrastructure, but it's pretty jarring to be dumped out onto Thorndon Quay as it is at the moment. Keeping up that momentum will also keep transferring people onto bikes. It's already obvious that there are a lot more people choosing this mode, and as I said, that's good for everyone, not just for cyclists. Also, again, as I've said, money spent on improving cycling facilities will, in the long term, save the council money for all of the reasons above. The other thing I'd like to mention is 30 km/h zones. These are pretty cheap, and in reality, they barely slow car drivers down at all. And I know this because I travel at this speed, and despite most of the roads that I cover being 50 km/h zones, it is still way faster for me to cycle to work than it is for me to drive, and I am always overtaking cars. They overtake me, I zip straight past them. 30 km/h zones will make cycling in Wellington much less intimidating than it currently is. To finish off, I've got 30 seconds left. I want to highlight that what should be obvious. Cars are not a scalable long-term solution for transport in Wellington, or in fact for any city anywhere. There is more than enough evidence, particularly from Europe, that building more roads does not reduce congestion. Getting people out of cars and onto bikes absolutely will. That's me.
Thank you, Adam. We probably don't have enough time for a question, but thank you so much for coming in and being the lucky last. Thank you. Right, now we do have, for once in these meetings, we're going to need our remote. We do have, sorry for walking into the mic. We're going to formally receive the oral submissions. So no mai Andrea Reeves, ki te horo e te kōrero.
I will take the report as read.
I would like to move, and the Deputy Mayor would like to second that we receive the information, hear the oral submitters and thank them for their submissions. I understand there is some debate, so you can glare at Councillor McNulty.
I just want to thank the Chair, Councillor Matthews, for this process. This is the hardest chairing job of any councillor and anything that we do around this LTP. We are managing a huge number of people coming through and a huge number of councillors, and I think something that we should be cognizant of is the way that we can show the most respect to the public is by keeping to time, and that does mean sometimes we don't get a question, we don't get everything we want out, but that is actually us showing respect for the public who've taken time out of their day, out of their schedule to come here. And I know it can be a thankless job, but I really felt it was important to establish that you've done a really good job at making this process fair, equitable, letting councillors have their time for questions, going over limit when it allows for, but also giving the public that respect. So I just thought it was important to note that in the debate.
Thank you so much for your comments, Councillor McNulty. Councillor Abdurrahman.
I absolutely support what Councillor McNulty said, and thank you so much for chairing in such a very difficult time, but you managed it pretty well. And the second part I want to say is for our submitters, really, this is not easy for them to read through all this. We get paid, but for them, this passion, they love this city, going through this and coming and sitting here, waiting for their time, and all that work. Squeezing into 5 minutes is not an easy one, but we hear you. And for those who really work, especially thank you for some people who I work with, like the union, A2, Living Wage, and so many of you. We really appreciate the hard work you have been doing. The fight will continue, and this is not gonna be the end of it. But thank you all.
And Deputy Mayor Foon.
Just super quick to just thank our Democracy Services team.
I have a list of thank yous to make.
So
Yes.
I'll just go really quick then. 24.8 hours of submissions comprising of 102 individuals and 88 organisations. So just, yeah, thanks everyone.
Shall I do my thank yous now as right of reply? So I would first of all like to thank all submitters again, as Councillor Abdurrahman did so eloquently. I would like to thank all councillors. We have never really come close to needing, to worrying about quorum, so that has been fantastic, given we have had the most submissions to hear. And I particularly want to thank my Deputy Chair, Councillor Panovich, for all your chairing as well. I'd like to thank all of the ELT members who have been through this journey with us. I would like to thank Stephen's team, Baz, Lloyd, Amy, Matthew and others for all of the work that went into this whole process. The biggest thank you has to go to our Democracy Services and MSAR teams for making all of this happen, for working so well with our community, and for such a seamless process for everyone involved. So I want to acknowledge Jen, Sean, Heidi, Kate, Nina, can't read my own writing, Tian, Steph, Elise, Marcella, and especially Letitia for all of the magnificent work you do. Our city absolutely proud. Could we please vote on the motion? Thank you. Did I miss anyone?
Yes, from me.
And a yes from me with my thumb up.
That has carried. I would now like to close these hearings with a karakia. Unihia, 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 ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nāko, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū, ko ia rā e rongo, whakairia aki ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia.